There's no doubt about it, life is speeding up. We're trying to fit more and more into our days without any more time on the clock. We're working longer, working second jobs, eating faster, travelling faster, and communicating across the world in an instant. All of this speed isn't all bad. There are obviously huge benefits to modern living, but all of this development and streamlining that's made in the name of progress has had some unintended consequences. We spend about 24 hours a week on our phone. The average office worker will receive 121 emails a day, and we spend about a year of our life commuting. There are loads of articles floating around the internet about millennial burnout, our shortening attention spans, and our ever-growing consumption addiction. And the reason that we're talking about this is that a lot of the changes that we ask people to make at Hubbub to help the environment, and a lot of the changes that are needed at a policy level to combat climate change, require long-term planning, forward thinking, and a little bit of time. Take an example. A really sustainable diet might look something like buying locally where you can, cooking from scratch if you can, and bulk cooking to reduce your energy consumption and also to reduce food waste. While in reality this doesn't take that long, it can seem like a lot of effort when we can order food from all over the world straight to our door, and if we decide to, buy ready meals that don't even require cooking. Or you're running late, so it's easier to jump in an Uber than it is to get public transport or cycle somewhere. Or we decide that we need something brand new for a party, and rather than double checking our wardrobes or asking a pal to borrow something, we do next day delivery on loads of different dresses. And on a larger scale, governments might decide to focus on short-term policies that give them the best chance of re-election, rather than put time and energy into long-term sustainability plans, which might not pay off until they're out of government. So, with the world on a treadmill, are we moving too fast to live sustainably? Before we answer that question, I want to find out a little bit more about why we are living so fast and what the consequences are. So we're going to go and talk to Marcus, who's one of the editors of Delayed Gratification. It's a slow journalism magazine that is doing things a little bit differently. So can you tell me a little bit about what Delayed Gratification is?
Sure. So Delayed Gratification is a quarterly news magazine, and the reasoning behind it is that we return to stories at least 3 months, 6 months, or a year after they happen to say, this is what happened next. Mm-hmm. So we found in an age where news is constantly breaking on Twitter, rolling news all the time, we're hearing the starts of lots of stories, but not how they finish.
And why did you feel like you had to set it up? What was happening at the time?
We noticed that the speed of news had just changed completely. And we just thought it left a real gap for someone to provide a little bit of context, a little bit of analysis, a little bit of depth, and a bit of hindsight. So we're very keen for it to be a print product. Mm-hmm. We really like print magazines.
It's lovely.
Thank you. Yeah, we're really proud of it. And so we launched 8 years ago, and I'm glad to say that we've been able to keep it going and growing.
Because there's so many different ways that you can get your news. Like my friends get their news from Reddit, which suddenly things have changed where you might not get your news from one publication.
Yes.
And you're getting a sentence rather than a properly investigated article.
Exactly, yes. And it is. And it's not that we've got nothing against different sources for news. I think it is just that what you're saying about the headlines and the idea of feeling like you know what's happening because you've seen the breaking news headline. And also the way that particularly digital journalism is funded is it's a race for eyeballs. So you've had a rise of kind of clickbait headlines. You need to attract people. Like you said, people aren't necessarily as loyal to a brand, so they're clicking through. So you get these quite sensationalist headlines. And if you're not even clicking through to read that story, you end up with quite an alarmist view of the world and an idea of what's happening without a chance to really kind of go back and see what happened next and to delve into it and to hopefully understand some of the underlying issues.
More broadly, why do you think that things are speeding up and we're suddenly moving at a much faster pace than we were 10, 20 years ago?
There's still the same amount of hours in a day, but we've kind of blurred the lines a little bit between the different stages of a day, if you like. Yeah. So now with phones in particular, I can be sat at dinner with my wife and she goes to the toilet and I have a quick check of the phone and I get a work email and suddenly I'm back in work mode. Also, I think on the whole we are bombarding ourselves with a lot of information all the time. It's very difficult to sit and watch a television programme, we were talking about this earlier, without also looking at your phone at the same time.
How can we carve out that time for ourselves to try and slow things down a little bit?
It's very difficult. I think a lot of it is having times for certain devices and trying to get back to a little bit of that. Right now is a time when I'm working, and now is a time when I'm not working. So I think the first thing is to take your work email off your phone, for example. I think that's a very good way of instantly carving back a little bit of time, that if you want to check your work, then you get your laptop and you open that, and that puts you in a different headspace.
It's about finding the balance, isn't it? Of like, there's a lot of really wonderful things that we've got from the digital world, but we need to make sure that we're using it in a responsible and careful and interesting way. What exactly is the slow movement? Because there are a lot of different slow.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So we see kind of slow journalism an extension of like the slow food movement and the slow travel movement. It's all about taking your time to do something properly. People like to know that their food, where it's come from, and that it's come from a kind of a good source, and quite often that's combined with buying locally as well. The same with the slow travel movement. It's about how you get there, it's about the joy of the journey, and also about doing a lot less damage en route, less flights, more trains. And like I said, it's all just really about quality, taking your time, sustainability.
And if there was one benefit that you could use to win people over to making a few lifestyle changes, what do you think it would be?
I think it's just a general sense of ease, which is a terrible, terribly kind of vague thing to offer someone. But I think there is something about just getting that balance back. There's something about living a sustainable life that I think is very exciting to people these days, and very enticing, and exactly the way that we should be living. You know, we've seen some very alarming reports about the levels of consumption. The IPCC report that came out just in October last year, saying about 12 years to avoid kind of quite serious climate change. Everyone's got to take a part in that process. I don't think we can wait for somebody else to give us the answers. So everyone making small changes can add up to a big difference.
Thank you so much, that was great. If you want to find out more about Delayed Gratification or get your very own copy, I'll put a link to their website in the description. I think that the effect of speed on our ability to live sustainably are twofold. Firstly, we've become majorly disassociated from the things that we buy and that we use every day. I can order everything from furniture to clothes in one click. It will arrive the next day, and I've never had to think about where that thing was made or how it got there, or even if I want it, because I can always send it back the next day, right? This distance encourages us to consume more while obscuring all of the environmental consequences. Secondly, while we might all want to do the right thing, like recycle properly or shop locally or reduce our energy consumption, actually carving out the time to make these things a priority can seem like an impossibility. So what are the ways that we can slow down and, in the act of doing so, live more sustainably? Value your time. Combat the pressure to squeeze more and more into your day. Decide what you do and you don't have time for, and it might give you a little bit more time to relax, get outside, and maybe even do some long-term thinking. Take stock of what you have. The pressure to buy more and more is completely immense. Advertising is optimized to make you buy more, and they sell the idea of equating stuff with worth. But next time, before you buy something, take stock of what you already have. Decide if you really need it, and if you do, have a think about where that thing came from and how it was made. I've started writing a list of the things that I want at the beginning of the month, and at the end of the month, if I still want them and I have the cash, I'll buy it. It's genuinely been amazing. I mean that I don't run out of money by the end of the month. Don't try and do everything at once. When you take something like living sustainably, it can seem totally overwhelming because there's so many different things that you can do, but it doesn't have to be all or nothing. Choosing to live a little bit slower doesn't mean that you suddenly have to start carving out time to make your own cheese or meditate every day if they're not things that you actually enjoy. So just experiment with a few things and then try and stick with a couple that work for you. I'm looking for a little bit of slow living inspiration. So have you made any changes this year to slow down a little bit or live more sustainably? If you have, then please let me know in the comments so that I can give it a go. And that's the end of the episode. To find out more and to get inspired, head to our website, www.hubbub.org.uk, where you'll find loads of top tips to give you the spark to do things differently. Tune in for the next episode and come and join the Hubbub.